And coming up from Sky News, why prisoners are being told good behaviour isn't enough to qualify them for perks. A former prison governor will give us his views. So the government is saying it's going to crack down on prisoners' perks, with inmates in England and Wales having to work harder for access to things like television and the gym. Well, what have been called entry-level privileges will apply to all prisoners in their first 2 weeks of sentence. Access to private cash will be restricted. Subscription television channels will be removed from private prisons. And there'll also be a halt to the screening of X-rated movies. After that, the Justice Secretary says perks will have to be earned through work or education programmes.
It's fair to say that jail isn't cushy as things stand at the moment, and what's lacking is any chance of work or training or an opportunity to get out of your cell. So if the Justice Secretary is going to make more opportunities for people to gain skills for employment, that's excellent. If he's just going to sound tough, that's less good.
I think we've got to be very clear what prisons are for. It's about us setting an appropriate regime. I think when somebody arrives in prison, they shouldn't be able to wear their own clothes. They shouldn't have a TV in their cells. They should demonstrate over their first week or two in prison that they're willing to engage in rehabilitation programs, sign on to training courses, start doing work in the prison laundry so they're doing something positive, and not sit there saying, I won't engage. And I think if they won't engage, they won't take part, they're not interested, there's no reason why we should then say, OK, well, we'll give you a TV so you can sit in your cell watching daytime TV all day.
Well, will it happen? Will it work? Let's get an expert view from Keith Munns, who's the former governor of Wormwood Scrubs in London and Albany Prison on the Isle of Wight. He spent 40 years in this service, becoming area manager for all London's prisons, so he should know. Very good morning to you, good morning. Mr. Munn. I mean, the broad point is the timing of all this. 2 days before some very important elections for the Conservatives, they're under pressure from the right in the form of UKIP. Sounding tough on an issue like this presumably is within those calculations, or do you think it is about making prisons work better?
I think there's an awful lot of politics about what's being said at the moment. It's quite right that a scheme that we've had in prisons probably since the mid-90s, which is called the Incentives and Earned Privileges Scheme, because that's what it does. It provides an incentive and prisoners have to earn a move up the scale. That's been there for quite a long time, and it's quite right that it's reviewed. A lot of what's being said isn't new. Prisoners have to do something to maintain the level that they're on or to go to a higher level. And if they don't do something, for example, if there's work for them and they don't go to that work, or there's an education course or a training course and they don't go there, then it's quite right that they should be reviewed and probably go down a level. So they will lose privileges. That's quite reasonable. What I'm uncomfortable with is the suggestion that people move into uniform for the first fortnight and get nothing.
Why about what's wrong with that? I mean,
firstly, I'm not sure whether that's been costed. It's quite cheap for prisoners to wear their own clothes in prison, and this was introduced some time ago. I was at Manchester in the 90s, and we had prisoners in their own clothes at that time. And it saves an awful lot of money rather than providing everyone with a uniform. If the Justice Secretary believes that putting people into a uniform will prevent crime, I don't think that's accurate. The other point is that the first time that somebody comes into prison is when he or she is at their most vulnerable. If we are then saying you will lose your identity, we'll put you into a uniform and we'll lock you into a cell by yourself with nothing to do, I think that's quite a dangerous tactic.
And that's a very important point, because you said in your first answer there, if work or education or training is available. And it's a big if, isn't it? Given I mean, you know more than most about the overcrowding, the pressures on prisons to provide that kind of rehabilitation and training.
And a lot of those pressures over the years have been financial. The prison service has done very well in saving the required amounts of money, and it's saved more than a lot of other government departments. The difficulty is that by saving money, the way that prisons have saved money in the past is to reduce the regime. So, for example, workshops perhaps in some prisons don't open on a Friday afternoon. You then save the staff time, the instructors' time, and everything else. So, and that's, you know, the cuts over the years have meant that governors have had to manage their resources, and that is the way that that's happened. Now, to increase that will quite likely cost resources. And Juliet Lyon was quite right. You know, what we need to do is to make sure that prisoners work, they have a chance of a job when they go out, they've got somewhere to live when they go out, they've got family connections, rather than tinkering around with whether they can watch 18 movies or not.
But I want to ask you about, watching 18 movies or not. It's an important part of the process, whether that happens or not. But I mean, do you predict problems between the prison officers who are at the sharp end and some of the inmates if suddenly, after being allowed to do it, you can't watch your favourite football match in the evening?
You know, how this is introduced will obviously be done sensitively and will be phased in. But the problem is that, you know, at 10 o'clock at night on the normal channels, and all public sector prisons do not have Sky TV, do not have cable TV. They've got 5 channels, or the Freeview channels. So people can watch what's on after 10 o'clock at night. That may well be an 18 movie. I'm not quite sure how that is prevented from being screened on a normal TV into a cell.
But I mean, what I'm pushing towards is we've got overcrowding, we've got some prisons where the conditions are pretty awful. Way back in the past, 20 years and more, the Strangeways is still in the mind. I'm not saying that this would be, could we get closer to that though?
I think prisoners won't be happy if this isn't handled carefully, and I think it will be handled carefully because the prison service is used to making changes and has made changes over the years. I think, you know, people will be sensitive about the way that it's done, and I don't predict riots all over the place, which is, you know, the sort of suggestion that's being made in some quarters.
But pressure builds.
Pressure builds, and it will be need to be handled sensitively, and it will be need to be done over a period of time rather than just rushed in and everything taken away from.
But it's interesting. I mean, the overall what you're saying is a lot of it's been done already.
Absolutely.
You know, what is new in this?
I think it's politics. There's a lot of politics in this rather than anything new that's going to keep people out of prison or keep them on the straight and narrow when they go out. I think a lot more effort needs to be put into what happens when they go out and keeping people out of prison. There's a lot of people with mental health problems who are in prison and shouldn't be there.
Okay, Mr. Munn, thank you very much indeed for your time and your expertise there. Very good to see you. Thank you. Now,